cross the new rail and go to the
Exactly. That's good. Okay, team, I think we're ready for broadcast.
Yeah, this looks good.
This is the study session of Tuesday, January 28th, and let's do it. Our study session topics tonight include an auditor discussion, board and commission interview process, etc. And then if we have some time a little bit later, we'll also ask the city manager to give us maybe an economic development update on that. So this is not a discussion of the audit as far as the first item. It's more an auditor discussion. Randy and Tyra are going to be introduced by Mr. Farman.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Just a little bit of background information. The city is required by charter to rotate their annual auditors in the audit firm every 5 years. So this past year we went through a selection process and narrowed it down to some finalist firms, and council selected Anton, Collins and Mitchell as the city's new audit firm. So I wanted to introduce Randy Watkins and Tyra Litzow. They're going to discuss their audit objectives and how the annual audit process works, since we do have a new audit firm this year.
Thank you. As Doug mentioned, I'm Randy Watkins. I'm an audit partner with Anton, Collins, Mitchell, and in a moment I'll be introducing Tyra, who will walk through the planning document. As part of this process, we are required to go through some required communications with you, which are included in this document, which I believe was distributed in advance and should be part of your packets. But the idea here is that we want to create an open dialogue, and the audit really, it should be a two-way street. It's us performing procedures that we deem to be appropriate based on the risks that we've assessed, but it's also an opportunity for you to have a dialogue with us and share with us things that you'd like us to focus on. And that's really the purpose of this meeting, is to share with you. We have had the opportunity to perform some of our internal procedures and do some risk assessment. So we'll share with you the results of that and then all the other things that are in here, but then also find out from you if there are additional things you'd like us to be looking at, or if there's anything at the top of your mind that you'd like to be part of the audit as well, and we'll go through whether or not we can help you with that or not. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Tyra, who is the senior manager on the engagement.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to kind of go through this PDF document. The first few pages is just the summary letter, but the engagement team has been set. It's myself and Randy, and then we also have a senior who's Krista, an engagement in charge, Megan, and then one staff. And Megan, myself, and Krista were out here in December doing interim procedures. We did some risk assessment procedures. We walked through some transactions. We got an understanding of the internal controls at the city. So this page just shows you your audit team. And feel free at any time, you guys can reach out to us if there are any questions. You can also reach out to Doug, and he would be more than happy to ask us those same questions. But on page 4 of the document, it just goes through management's responsibilities for the financial statements. Management is responsible for preparing the financial statements with the oversight of those charged with governance, and in this case, that's the City Council. Also, they're required to establish and maintain effective internal controls over financial reporting, identify and ensuring compliance with the laws and regulations, safeguarding the assets, looking at accounting principles and accounting estimates, completing a disclosure checklist, making sure the financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP and that they're materially accurate. At the end of the audit, we will be asking management for a representation letter, which just confirms in writing some of the representations that are provided to us during the audit. Yes.
So Tyra, before you turn the page on this,
yes,
these are in general management responsibilities around the audit. From an auditor's perspective, are you referencing any of the charter provisions or anything of that nature that might be in addition?
No, this is purely from the perspective of as auditors. There are certain things, in order for us to maintain our independence, there are certain things that we are not permitted to do and help with management. So this is really just making sure there's a clear delineation between what we're responsible for and what management is responsible for. This doesn't contemplate what would be included within the charter, job descriptions, or anything like that. Thank you.
On page 5, it talks about our engagement objectives. We're required to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. And what that means is we don't give absolute assurance. We don't look at every single transaction that the city enters into every year. So we do a risk-based approach. We look at significant transactions. We look at significant balances to make sure that they're reasonably stated in accordance with GAAP. We do look at the internal controls. We get an understanding of the internal controls to kind of help us with our planning on a risk assessment process, but we actually don't give an opinion on the internal controls of the city. It's mostly for an understanding for our planning purposes. We communicate our responsibilities in relation to the audit. We do the engagement letter, which has been signed, just kind of formalizing what the responsibilities are of management and us as part of the audit. We do an overall audit strategy. We inquire of those charged with governance about risk of material misstatements, including fraud risks. So during this meeting, if you have anything that you want to bring up to our attention, feel free to do that. But we also will be contacting someone on City Council, just kind of go through our fraud risk assessment. Those are required procedures every year. We will consult with management regarding accounting and reporting matters. We'll communicate with management and those charged with governance if we identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the internal controls. As part of the audit of financial statements, there are some required information, supplementary information, which is management's discussion analysis. Our responsibilities are to read those to make sure that there's nothing that's material inaccurate, inconsistent with the financial statements, but we don't actually give an opinion on that information. We will work with management towards the timely issuance of financial statements. We are required to maintain our independence both in fact and appearance, so we will do that during the audit engagement. And then also we'll make sure that we communicate with management and those charged with governance about the timely matter of financial reporting matters, and then any communications, required communications as part of the final audit procedures. Yes?
Peggy?
So, am I on?
Yes.
In the last couple of years, we've had a couple of minor things that we encouraged future folks, to attend to and so forth. They're not major things at all, but maybe some of how cash was handled in certain places or whatever. So are you going to be looking, let's say even at last year's report, to see where there might have been anything to help make us better yet?
Yeah, as part of the, we will look at recommendations that have been previously made. We're going to determine whether or not those recommendations have been implemented. And I think that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
then-
I mean, and maybe there might be something along those lines that was okay last year, but
May have been, yeah.
Well, maybe needs to have a little attention.
Certainly, and we have a fresh set of eyes, so we might look at things a little bit differently too. One of the things that we talk about when we do our risk assessment is not necessarily dollar amounts or big things, like you mentioned, small things, but we talk a lot about newspaper risk. So even if it's not a big dollar amount, if it appears in the newspaper, it could get blown out of proportion and look bad. So we do design procedures that we think address some of that. Where we've seen other organizations that are affected by something that doesn't end up being a big dollar amount, but somebody abuses their credit card or something like that. It ends up in the newspaper and it looks bad. So we do design audit procedures around those types of things as well.
Thank you.
And Tyra, getting to your comments about you don't issue an opinion about the numbers. Essentially, in your objectives, you're trying to determine, are they accurate, not whether they're good. In other words, city could be insolvent, not that I want that taken out of context, but your opinion is going to be, are those accurate numbers?
And what I was talking to about the opinion, that was more on just one piece of the financial statements. We do give an opinion on the financial statements as a whole, in terms of making sure that they're free of material misstatements. We do look at, if we find that there's some, not saying again the insolvency things, we will definitely bring that up to management and the city council. If we find that there may be better ways to handle that kind of stuff, but we don't give an opinion on that piece.
It's rare, but it is possible to give a going concern. It's called a modified opinion, but it's a going concern opinion, and all that really says is that the financial statements have been prepared, assuming that the organization will continue as a going concern, but there's substantial doubt because of liquidity issues. Not that we expect to have anything like that here, but we have had that in situations before, so it would be a modified opinion, but.
Thank you.
We're able to pay our bills every week, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, should we have brought in an invoice for a retainer?
Yeah, it's a relief, isn't it? Yeah.
And for the employees, we meet payroll.
Yes.
Our check's clear, it's good.
Very important.
Page 6 talks about our overall audit strategy and our planned scope.
Tell me about it.
So during our interim procedures and also based on our risk assessment, we do look and consider prior audit results, including anything that we identified as part of our interim procedures, including discussions with management, those charged with governance about the operations, business activities, and risks. We look at the inherent risk within the city, any balances that are more susceptible to fraud or financial statement risk, recent developments within the industry, regulatory environment, and general economic conditions, any recently issued and effective accounting and financial reporting guidance, and a little bit later I'll talk about a new standard that's going to be coming out that's effective as of 2015. We also look at the significant accounting policies and procedures, especially those that require significant management judgments and estimates. We look at the information about the systems and the computer environment, and then just the overall control environment, risk management, and monitoring processes.
Bruce? So you guys are saying you'll consider prior year audit results in terms of the plan scope. Talk a little bit about that. You guys obviously didn't do last year's audit. How much visibility do you have to what level of detail?
So we do receive any audit adjustments that were identified as part of the last year's audit, including any past audit adjustments. Also, as part of our acceptance procedures, we do a predecessor work paper review where we did go out and review the predecessor auditor's work papers, mostly to be able to rely on the opening balances, so we don't have to go and audit previous year's balances. We do also receive, as part of our just engagement acceptance procedures, any findings or communications that were provided in the past year to City Council. So we look at all of that and also just in generalities, things that we've seen with other entities that are similar to the city as part of our risk assessment.
So you've got some level of familiarity and comfort with respect to the general history of what we've done, which, Councilmember Cole was sort of going there as well on the management letter, but good. Okay, I was just curious on a handoff, how that works.
And then based upon our initial assessment, our audit approach is mostly going to be primarily a substantive approach, which means we'll be testing transactions substantively, looking at dollar amounts versus invoices and testing it that way, just because we've deemed it to be the most efficient way to do the audit. Where our primary areas of focus is just fraud risk. That's just a primary area of focus of every entity that we audit, ensuring proper safeguards against misappropriations of assets, internal controls over the financial reporting. That includes both the monthly financial reports that the City Council provides as well as the year-end audited financial statements. Revenue recognition, just due to the nature of the city, you receive revenue from property and sales use tax, intergovernmental grants, so it's just making sure that the revenue is recorded in the proper fiscal year. Capital assets, just due to the nature of the dollars involved, long-term liabilities, again, with the nature of the dollars, compliance with applicable state and local regulations, and then evaluation of going concern. Like Randy mentioned, we do look at it, but that's just because lately there seems to be a little bit more emphasis on that going concern across the nation, but we don't anticipate any items here.
And Tyra, could you comment, the company has a number of funds and we have a couple of enterprise funds. To what extent do you go back into the enterprise funds and do you treat that as well as the general fund?
So when we do our materiality calculations, when we're looking at it, we do it based on an opinion unit. So you look at it in terms of each major fund of the city, which usually includes your enterprise funds separately. So we do assess each major fund and then overall all the rest of the funds. So we will be looking at the enterprise funds. We'll look at the billing. We'll look at the receivables relating to those, the capital assets for those as well.
For those of you who are familiar with, in the business world, having to go through an audit, this is almost like auditing several businesses because, in the business world, our opinions on there's one opinion in there. Now we have several opinions because each opinion unit that Tyra mentioned, we're applying audit procedures on. They have different scopes, everything, so.
Well, although they might all have cash, we apply different scopes, but depending on which fund the cash is in and the capital assets are in. Page 7 just shows our overall audit timeline. We did come out and do interim procedures in December. Starting in March, we will be doing our periodic meetings, doing status calls with management, just to make sure that everybody's on track with the requested items. Our planning meeting with those charged with governance is today. We did some substantive testing at interim, and then we'll be out in April for final fieldwork procedures. And we expect to issue the financial statements and the opinions in May. Page 8 is just our independence communication.
Wait a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Doug, when is the CAFR due? Is it June 1st?
Yes, it is. It's due at the end of May.
Okay.
Bruce?
Hi, good evening. During your process, do you look at how we value our capital assets like this building, the library, and some of our other buildings, and how we apply a value to them and consider any risk that we might have assumed by undervaluating them compared to what the replacement costs would be?
Capital assets of the city are, unless they're donated, they're going to be recorded at historical cost, what you paid for the items. And then we do look at the reasonableness of the estimated useful life of those and how it's depreciated over those useful lives. That's kind of how we've done it. And we look at additions that same way. So we'll be comparing your additions to the invoices, what you paid for those asset additions.
Yeah, the only time you'd have an adjustment is if there was an impairment. So if the carrying value was more than the actual value, for instance, if there was some damage that decreased the value, you wouldn't write anything up.
Okay, thank you.
If I could add on to that, Bruce, so from a fiscal standpoint, they're looking at it from one angle, from an insurance standpoint, part of what we were doing through CIRSA, and if you recall, relative to the impact fees, looking at the actual valuation and where our insurance levels were, did we have it assessed properly? That's what CIRSA is actually in the process of doing right now for both their edification and ours, and then we'll use that data tied into making sure that the impact fee analysis was accurate as well. But I think, I'm not exactly sure what the intent of your question was, but that's when we'll insure it from an insurance standpoint.
That was the overall issue that I was addressing, and I didn't know whether the audit would make a judgment or perhaps uncover or support.
I think it's probably
evaluation.
more through the CIRSA analysis, looking at our insurance numbers that we have versus what it appears that the valuation and asset value of the buildings and et cetera are. So, okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Jerry?
we do take a look at the insurance coverages and try to get an idea of whether or not you're adequately insured, but they would know better than us. We're just trying to get an idea of that. So.
Jerry? Great, thank you.
So Tyra, you're going to be looking at all receivable type accounts for collecting, are we collecting that kind of items? Are you also going to be looking at all of the bank accounts? And one of the things I'm thinking of, years ago, I don't think we do anymore, but we used to have some small bank accounts that weren't really city accounts, but we still sort of managed them. I don't know if we have any more of those.
We do not do that anymore, no, and we've consolidated a lot of our bank accounts, so we just have a
It's all
few.
city accounts now.
Definitely,
At this
yeah.
point.
There's some trust accounts where people have donated some money that are held in trust over the years, but those are,
Right, but they don't belong to other organizations anymore.
Right.
And then my last question here then would be, how about the practices or procedures Are you going to be looking at those kind of, auditing those type of areas?
Like I mentioned, we do get an understanding of the internal controls, and if we feel that there's best practices, we will bring those up to management, just through our observations and our understandings of similar clients. But we don't actually give an opinion on the practices.
But as it relates to the fraud prevention and things like that?
Right.
Thank you.
And back to your question on the cash balances, we do look at bank reconciliations for the significant cash accounts. We confirm balances with the banks. We do look at outstanding checks, so we do test the cash balances as well.
Thank you.
Page 8 is just our independence communication. Like I mentioned, we're required to be independent of the city, both in fact and appearance. This just confirms that we are independent.
That Greg is a resident doesn't count?
No. Page 9, this just talks about the significant accounting and reporting matters. Like I mentioned, in June of 2012, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, issued a new standard, which is going to fundamentally change how pension liabilities and pension funds are reported at the governmental entities. This is not going to be effective until December 31st, 2015, but it's going to be some significant changes. For the city, the fire employees are part of the Fire, Police, and Pension Association, which is the FPPA. And that information from FPPA now, currently it's being shown as just a required supplemental schedule, and it's a disclosure that talks about, what the actuarial value of the assets are versus the unfunded obligation versus your actual liability. And so currently it's just being shown as a disclosure, but in 2015 it's going to now be shown as a liability of the city in the government-wide statements. So it's going to change those statements then. And it's only effective for the defined benefit plan. So if you have defined contribution plans, it's not effective for that. So the only defined benefit plan that I'm aware of is the FPPA. And that one is, because it's a cost-sharing multiple employer plan, the city is going to be relying a lot exclusively on FPPA to provide information to the city in terms of how to report that, what the information looks like. They will be doing the actuarial studies again, but it's my understanding that the actuarial assumptions that will be used in those studies is going to be significantly different than it has been done in the past. And then it's going to also increase the disclosures and the supplementary information of the financial statements. So we are going to be developing some templates and tools that we will provide to the management to kind of help with this transition and this assistance in that. And we also have some guidance that we can provide as well.
Have you all seen the GFOA guide that they published for, it's basically designed for council or board members? Have you seen that yet? It's about that big. It's published by the GFOA.
No, I don't think they've seen it yet.
I brought 2 down with me that you guys can have and just distribute, but I left them in my car. So as soon as we're done, I'm going to run out and grab them and I'll bring them in to you guys. But it's pretty good. It goes through, it's a Q&A, and it's 30, 40 pages at the most. But it goes through a Q&A and covers a lot of the stuff that's in here. I mean, it is going to have a significant effect on your financial statements, or it could potentially have a significant effect on the financial statements. There's a lot more accounting and just a lot of mechanics that go into this. And so it's good to have that, and it's probably good to have that understanding. And then, if you have an opportunity to go through that and you have any questions for us when we come back and do the audit wrap document, that'd be a good time to go through them, so.
Good. In just in a second, in taking a look at that, and when Tyra, you mentioned it's going to be significantly different, do you see the individual organizations that are relying on the FPPA possibly saying, we don't like the assumptions that are being established at the association level?
Not yet. We haven't seen, nothing that we've seen yet. I mean, that, in the past, nobody's ever challenged it because it's not that big of a deal. You kind of you get the thing, you file it, you book the entries and move on. But because it could have a dramatic effect, you probably want to pay more attention to what they're putting into that. I mean, for instance, 8% estimated earnings on investments is probably completely unrealistic.
At least long-term.
Right. So, there'd be a number of, and that would be assumption that would probably hurt you, but you want to take a look at all of that. One of the fundamental changes is also the discount rate that they use for the liability. It'll change from an investment portfolio rate to your borrowing rate, which also has an effect. So depending on if you're underfunded or overfunded, there's a lot of really complicated mechanics that go into this, and I'm glad that I'm not an actuarial, but.
I am.
You are an actuarial? Wow. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So yes, I think you would want to challenge the assumptions a little bit more thoroughly going forward.
Thank you. Bruce.
Just along those same lines, so as I understand it, the standard 68 is applying to municipal and state governments, but it, just as a standalone, it doesn't apply to the FPPA. It's how it comes around, like you just described, how it comes back around, that we have a need for information from them. Am I getting that correctly?
There's a new standard that applies to FPPA, and that's GASB 67, and that's going to be effective the year before
Okay.
68 is applied to the local governments and the municipalities.
Will that force them to get into this, so that the momentum will already be rolling?
They will already be complying
Okay.
before you have to.
That was my concern.
And the biggest challenge I think that they're talking about now, and they've actually issued a new standard on it, GASB 71, which is effective at the same time as GASB 68, to address the measurement date, because right now, when do you get the FPPA report? In September, October?
Yeah, right around there.
So you would have to, if you selected a measurement date that was the same as your year end, we wouldn't be able to finalize the financial statements until October after your year end. So what they've allowed you to do is select a measurement date that was within 18 months or 12 months and a day
12 months, yeah.
of your year end. So you can select a measurement date of, for instance, this will become effective for you December 31st, 2015. You could select December 31st, 2014 as your measurement date, but then you have a whole year of activity that hasn't been reflected in that measurement. So now we have to figure out, and I haven't read GASB 71 yet, it just came out, but we have to figure out how that's going to affect the value during that 12 months.
And that's something that FPPA has come out with and said that due to the changes, their reporting to the municipalities is going to be later than they expect, than is being done right now. So that's why it really should be considered to do a measurement date of the year before, just because of timing. So you can make sure that you submit your CAFR and everything on time. And because of the year lag, there are some nuances that, again, we'll develop those tools and templates to kind of help you track, because there's pieces of it that's going to be amortized over certain lives depending on when you implement. So there's a lot of nuances to it that will work closely with management and making sure that it's implemented correctly. But I just wanted to bring this, we wanted to bring this up to you because it is going to change the financial statements in 2015.
And just for my clarification then, from a political perspective, assuming that what you said, which I think is everybody's presumption, that they make some assumptions about risk and benefit that may not be realistic. At some point, that becomes a political discussion generated by cities such as ourselves that feel like the risk that they're placing us, the liability, is not acceptable to us. And so that I was looking for the timeline when maybe that would all begin to gel in that discussion, the realities would hit, but it sounds like it might be delayed a year, if I'm grasping that.
Well, you'll get an opportunity to see how what assumptions they're using when they implement GASB 67. So you'd have a year to start challenging those assumptions.
And I know 68 and 67 really defined more tightly what assumptions can be used.
Yeah, and there's not multiple, there used to be multiple ways you could calculate it. There's only one now.
Yeah. Let's cover this a little bit later after we have a
Yeah.
chance to go through the Q&As.
Yeah,
We'll have
yeah,
an
yeah.
opportunity to ask questions. The liabilities have always been there in effect. What this is doing is creating more
Dropping.
rigor
Yeah.
and
And-
reporting
Yep.
that happens around.
Put it on your balance sheet.
Thank you.
And then the last two pages are just some resources that are available to the city as one of our clients through both ACM and BDO. We're an alliance firm with BDO, so those just provides the city council with some resources that is available to you.
So we took a little longer than 15 minutes, but are there any other questions?
Council have any other thoughts? Doug?
I just wanted to make note of a report that ACM does. When they went through when we went through the selection process, they presented us with this Beyond the Numbers report. I think it's going to be really popular with the council because it produces financial ratios for the city and also benchmarks those ratios with some other municipalities of the same size. And so that's going to be part of their report too. It'll be kind of a supplementary report. I know council's been kind of, they've been wanting more information about financial ratios and the fiscal health of the city, and I think this will outline some areas of strength for the city and maybe areas of improvement. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the city does take a very close look at our accounting. We are serious about the audit each year, and we also are welcome to comments when the auditors come in. We're always looking for ways to improve our processes and making sure that we are doing everything according to best practices and the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and GAAP. So we do take this very seriously, and every year we were hopeful that something that good and positive will come out of the audit, and so the city staff can keep improving each year. So we thank ACM for being here this next year.
Bruce, did you have anything?
Yeah, well, I did want to follow on with the pension thing, but do you want to wait? Or?
I was going to say that it's not going to impact our statements this year.
It'll be 2 more years.
But we will have an opportunity to see what comes out of the FPPA, and it might be better to actually take a look at it when we see the information from the FPPA.
And no, I don't disagree with that. I guess the one question I don't want to get into the weeds on it either, but I guess the one question I did want to ask was, if I understand what I think you guys are saying, is the risk here that if we hypothetically had underfunded pension liability that previously was off balance sheet, now we'd have to essentially fund that and recognize the expense, which theoretically would have a general fund impact? Is that a fair way to say it?
Doesn't affect your general fund, so you only book the entry on the government-wide statements. So the full accrual, economic resources measurement focus, financial statements, that first, the statement of net assets.
Okay.
Or statement of position, I guess. That's where it'll be reflected, so.
But what about but if it is underfunded, where does the P&L hit happen? Where's the expense to which fund?
That again will be, the change over year will be in the statement of activities on the government-wide level.
And I think you do a retrospective adjustment to net assets.
All right, so it's still sort of, it's on the balance sheet, but it's still sort of sequestered, if that's not a bad use of that phrase.
I don't know what you mean by that, but.
Well, the thing I would be concerned about is early visibility to what the order of magnitude is if there were a general fund impact that somehow, or another fund balance impact that we somehow had to make whole with some diversion of resources potentially out of the general fund. I mean, periodically we have enterprise funds, not enterprise funds is the wrong word, but we have like the EMT fund, the EMS fund, where we were under collected, or we weren't collecting enough, we had to actually divert resources that then obviously has an impact on the general fund. You're suggesting that's not going to be the case here? Okay, all right.
It'll be from the general fund, but it's on the government-wide statement, so it's the government as a whole. It's not going to be at the specific fund level.
So just to informally table the issue until we have a chance to take a look at where the FPPA is and our frequently asked questions in the material that Randy's going to run out to the car and provide to Doug and disseminate to council.
A great quote I just heard. I've already told you guys more than I know, so.
I had a sense of that. Okay. So, thank you very much, Tyra, Randy.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
And I just wanted to thank Doug and Tiffany through the interim procedures. I mean, transitioning auditors is probably not always fun, but I think it went really well, and we really appreciate your help.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming. We'll be right back.
It's kind of hard to understand. And then there's a statement.
But you can cover that.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. And you're right, it's a couple years down the road.
But we can look at it later this year when you get the FPPA. That will be the time.
Well, yeah, there's
I'm doing well. How are you, Jerry?
effective at the end of this year.
Yeah. So,
Oh, good, on the ED? Good. I got a little bit more tonight.
okay,
Well, I guess that was sort of.
Not that detail, 'cause that's just for you, but
okay,
just a couple of.
to regather the group for our second agenda item.
Tiffany?
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
So our second agenda item is dealing with what we're going to be seeing 2 weeks from now. I will ask you to remember to have the dates out there, which are the 10th and the 11th of, Wendy, do I have that right? 10th and the 11th are our interview dates. And I asked Wendy to start and just give us, recognizing that candidate applications or reapplications are possible to be submitted up through Friday of this week, but to give us at least an informational extract as to where some of the numbers are at this point in time. So, Wendy?
Okay, right now we have 21 applications, and we have not as many as I thought of the current boards reapplying, and I don't know whether they're waiting until the last minute or what the deal is. So I'm going to run through them real quick. In the museum, we have 3 open vacancies. 2 of those are termed out, and we have 1 application from a previous member. And then we have 5 other applications in general for the museum. The Board of Adjustments, we have 2 vacancies. 1 is a regular vacant position that has never been filled, and 1 I have not received an application for. The Building Board of Appeals, we have 3 vacancies. We have 1 application and 2 applications that have not been filed by the current members. And all these people who have not filed applications are eligible to file applications.
So those
And
3
I sent
vacancies.
the email to them back in December, letting all of the current members know that they needed to reapply and that it needed to be in by the 31st. Excuse me. And Planning Board, we have 2 openings, and we have not had either one of our current board members apply, although I spoke to Glenn today, and he said that both of them were going to, so I don't know about that. And we have 3 first-choice applications for Planning Board. Fine Arts Board, we have 4 openings. We have 4 applications from current members, and we have 4 additional applications from new people, which is their first choice. The Election Board, or Commission, we have 1 opening. The current member did not send in an application as of yet, and we have 1 applicant. The Library Board, we have 2 openings, vacancies. We have 2 that I have not received applications for, and 1 applicant for the first choice. Oh, excuse me, right before the meeting, I got 1 for the Library Board, so it's a 1 and 1. We have 1 application of a current member and 1 for, it's their first choice. The Liquor Authority, we have 3 vacancies, 2 applications, and 1 no application, and no applicants for the Liquor Authority, Licensing Authority.
Licensing Authority.
Sorry. For the South Metro Housing, we have 2 vacancies, have not received applications, although Dan told me that they were going to apply, and I have no applications for Schmo either. And then we have no openings for the Riverfront Authority, but I have 1 applicant that made that their first choice. So,
Which was historical preservation.
I'm sorry?
What was HPB?
We have 4 vacancies, 2 applications from current members, 1 that has not turned in an application that's a current member, and 1 vacancy that's never been filled, and we have 2 applicants that are not current members.
Okay, so that went quickly.
Do you want more? I could give you names and.
Oh, no, we're not looking for names.
I got
At
spreadsheets.
least I wasn't.
So just quickly, the notes I made, it looks like of openings that would not be filled by a incumbent, that there's only 4 total of all of them. 1 on Board of Adjustments, 1 on HPB, and 2 on museum.
Well, 2 on museum, 2 on Board of Adjustments, 2 on Building Board of Appeals. And this is just the numbers right now. 2 that would not be filled if they were current on HPB. 2 that would not be filled on Planning Board because I don't have their applications yet. Fine Arts is complete. Election Commission would be 1. The library would be 2. No, the library would be 1 and then we have 1 application. The licensing board would be, or licensing authority would be 1. And South Metro Housing would be 2. And that's using the current members that we have that have reapplied.
Okay, now, what I'd like to do for our discussion is, I put up on the board there at least some topics for us to consider, but it's not necessarily exhaustive, so you may have others. One is dealing with the interviews themselves with regard, do we want to have standard questions only? How much do we want to deal with impromptu and informal? Balance between the two. Other is with regard interviews, what involvement, even beyond council, might we want to have? What input might we want to seek from others? And I put particularly the chairman, current chairman, chairpersons, I should probably have made that, and staff, the staff liaisons that are there. And then the question possibly is with regard recording and or broadcasting those and making sure that we discuss those. But before we jump into those, I wanted to kind of set those as a little bit of a platform. Is there anything missing? Yes.
Nothing missing, but I wanted to go back to the openings and the candidates.
Sure.
Based on what he just said, it seems to me that if the applicants are due on the 31st, it's Friday?
Yes, this Friday.
If we don't see a fair amount come in at the last minute, would it behoove us to move this a couple weeks? We can do that. We have some time in the calendar that I think we've had to do it in the past. I just don't think that if we have, if we're not able to really have a vigorous set of interviews with.
The pool isn't very big.
Yeah, and I don't, perhaps we didn't get the word out enough, perhaps with the Super Bowl and the holidays and everything else that happens, people just move through life, not looking for boards and commission openings. Maybe we do, I think we've had to do this in the past too, hit the social media a little bit heavier, get some stuff in the newspapers, get some stuff off of Inspire Littleton, blast on there, something like that. I mean, maybe we
Reconnect.
I agree.
do what we can even now and see what we can
We don't have to
get.
appoint until March.
Yeah, and they don't have to serve until, they don't start serving until April 1st,
And we
yeah.
don't appoint till March, yeah.
I'd really like to give a power push on this, and
We could get something out. We did put it in the Littleton report, which is our standard piece. It's been on the web.
the report was out in December,
The beginning of December.
the beginning of December, so that's been 2 months, that's old.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know, Facebook, Twitter, Inspire Littleton, because that closes down.
Yeah, we have the Big Brother coming online,
Okay.
so. But we can tweet and Facebook it, certainly.
Can we put something in the Independent and the Villager, send a letter to the editor, or, I don't know, do something to even buy a little
We may miss
ad
the
or something?
Independent this week, but we can work on their online.
Yeah. I don't know. You guys can figure that out. I'd like to see a bigger pool. I think they're out there. Maybe even signs up at the museum or signs at the front door here, just so people know. I think people would be interested. It's just, that's my
Bruce?
comment there.
I think Debbie's absolutely discussed what the challenge is. I'm concerned, though, that we say in the ordinance that January 31st is a date certain, and I'm wondering how we honor what we have in the ordinance. And I know in the past, when we had a board we couldn't fill, we did re-advertise it, but we did the selection for the majority of the boards and commissions on meeting this standard, and then we still had an obligation to fill the positions, and there was another section, if I recall, that said council shall fill any vacancies as they occur, or whatever. But I don't want to not honor the January 31st by our decision. So, how to make this all work, because I think Debbie is absolutely right with the pool. Maybe there's somebody else out there. But, because I use this as an example just for that discussion, the library board, they got 4 vacancy applicants, they have 4 brand-new applicants. That one could be done by January 31st to meet the requirement.
Michael?
I would just take this opportunity to suggest that if the council is interested, to Councilman Beckman's comment, this is exactly the conversation we've been having, which is pull out some of this date certain stuff out of the ordinance and give yourself a flexibility. I'll put you guys back on track here in a second, but if council desires, I would suggest that you direct us to amend this ordinance and bring it back with language that is more flexible and allows each council to deal with it for not just this reason, but other reasons that the council may want to amend and change its protocols, and give yourself that through an administrative process as opposed to a hard ordinance process. But leave that up to you guys.
Peggy?
So I think it's important to have dates and to honor them, but maybe
I'm not.
No.
Just in
no,
the ordinance.
So no, but
Because
I
you're
think-
locked in.
No, but I still think that's important, and everybody knows what the rules are. But maybe we need to change the time of the year that we do this. You just are coming out of the holiday season and so forth, and if we did it at a little bit friendlier weather time of the year, people might be more engaged with this. I don't know, but we have in the past extended some term-limited people until we could fill. I think on one thing, we never did fill something. The person just kept continuing till we disbanded the tree committee. But I think it's important to have these and to stick with them, whether or not we want to change them for future year.
I think we have the opportunity to change the dates going forward. I like Bruce's comment about moving ahead with those that we do have and following through somewhat on the process with what we have. Whatever can be done between now and Friday, and if we can put a note to maybe get a report on Tuesday so we know what we're looking at, that going to be okay?
Yes, I will report to you on Tuesday if I've gotten any more.
So
and
we'll
let you know how many I've got.
we'll have that, but I know that in the past, we've also left positions open and have gone otherwise. And what I'd like to do, though, is also request for input from the chairman at least with regard anyone that's re-upping their application. And the question is, do we want to have the chairman more involved? But that would be something that we can request after Friday, because we'll know who has reapplied, so that the council would at least have that information.
And do you want them to give you a written report? The chairman of each board to give you a written report on the members who are up for reappointment? Okay. Like, okay, I've got to give them a little bit more information.
But I want to get the council to
Attendance? Sorry.
what the sentiment is first, yes.
Well, unless we say what kinds of things we'd like them to report on, I'm not totally comfortable with that. One of the values of, well, depending on what they might say, I wouldn't want them to be saying, well, somebody is not doing a good job because that person doesn't vote the way the chair would like them to vote or whatever. I think we have had attendance reports, maybe preparation, like people come prepared or not, but I think we need to circumscribe the kinds of things we're asking for information on.
Other comments?
I don't have a problem having a report from the chair. I think we have had that in the past. I think that I would also offer that I think that it would be beneficial to have the chair in the interviews, not asking questions, but at least observing and hearing answers, and could weigh in when we're doing our deliberation. The same thing with, I think, staff, the staff liaison. Primarily, I'm thinking of the quasi-judicial groups. I think that we have a higher level of importance in terms of the quasi-judicials, and the fact that we do not have liaisons, and we don't typically go to those meetings for the obvious reasons. We don't have that kind of feel for the group and what something's missing, some level of, somebody may need a little bit more, we're kind of missing experience on historic preservation, not an architect, but, I think that there's no doubt about it, the staff liaisons that are there at every single meeting, and then, of course, the chairmen that are there at every meeting, they are the ones that have that information. They know that. They understand where there's gaps, where there's needs, where things are working really well. And I think their input would be very, very important, very valuable in my deliberation and making a decision, because I think that it's important for us to fill the need, not fill a space, but fill needs. I don't have the same concern that Peggy has about asking, having clearly defined areas of interest from the chairs. I think we've got quality people, and I think we've got honest people, and I don't think that they would come at us with a report that was showing, I don't like this person because they didn't vote my way. I think we have to be very diligent in our analysis of what they're giving us to make sure we're not seeing that, but I don't know that I feel comfortable presuming that from them.
So if I heard it, valuing their input, and not in a dismissive sense, but also considering the source that it comes from, whether it's coming from staff or it's coming from the chair of the group, everyone's going to have their perspective, and you would appreciate certainly getting that input. Go ahead, Randy.
I just wanted to inject a caveat. Of course, if the chair is up for reappointment, then it would be the vice chair or some other representative of the council, the commission, or the board, so that the chair couldn't come in and evaluate himself. I don't know, maybe that's, I'm not trying to be sarcastic about that, but I think that, and I don't disagree with your proposal for a written report, but it seems to me that having a staff member who's a liaison, who is at each and every board meeting or hearing, we don't by design, attend those hearings, and so therefore we really, as council, really have no anecdotal information, let alone anything other than, I suppose we could read the minutes or something, but having a staff member that's been present, that's reactive, that's been able to see the performance as well as the chair. And I like the idea of having those two individuals, staff and the chair or vice chair, as the case may be available for us to solicit his or her commentary during the meeting, because we can do it in real time. And to use an example, it's like, well, you've just now heard, and obviously gotten to know your two people that are seeking reappointment, but you've also heard these three new people. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think that can be a more productive environment, and I would propose that as well.
Okay, so I'm going to mention kind of a logistical blip thought that kind of comes up with that is, as our interviews would typically be over 2 evenings, and then getting to our deliberations on the second, we'd be asking folks, unless we're able to structure the interviews so that we're dealing with board, and cluster them that way, which hasn't been, at least my experience with this, to have folks.
If in fact we want to do that, I would recommend that it is just for the quasi-judicial. And so perhaps one night would be just the quasi-judicial boards. And that may make it a little easier.
Recognizing some of that, we'd be willing, just trying to also deal with the candidates and trying to find common dates. Wendy, I know this is one of the things you struggle with in trying to schedule some of these, which is with folks and their availabilities. Would as council, at least if we needed to maybe throw a third evening there, so it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, to be able to accommodate quasi-judicials, possibly over 2 nights, just to be able to deal with that and not necessarily leaving us room otherwise.
I'm okay with city council making the decision on who's going to serve on a board. I think bringing in the chairman or anybody else on those committees, it puts a little bit of responsibility on them that is maybe not necessary. I think we've all done hiring, and I think we can make the right decisions.
Leaning in the other direction.
I am.
Sentiment of council? Bruce?
I'm inclined to, I think Randy's got a fair point that we don't see some of these things, and I don't disagree, Jerry, with what you're saying, that you know, we can gauge quality, but I think there is value in terms of in a closer working relationship with the board chairs, for example, on the quasi-judicials, that we don't interact with as frequently as we would if we had liaisons. I can see some value to that. I'd probably go that direction.
I guess my thought on that, is it broken? What are we trying to fix here? Are we just putting another step into something?
No, I kind of viewed it, not so much that. I guess I would kind of view it as an enhancement to the process. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily broken, but I think having that input is a value adder, I guess.
Bruce?
One of the requirements is that this is done in open session, and I think that's quite a challenge you're giving to a citizen that didn't know that was going to be part of what they were going to have to do, and that's to give some evaluation of their peers on that committee. I think that could be a little problematic, and maybe the benefit of it may not be that great compared to what we're asking somebody to do, what they were not really prepared to do in open session.
That's a jump that I didn't want to necessarily do, but I'll point this out, which is, so we'll get a whole bunch of muck on the table at the same point in time, which is with regard to the sessions, and they're always open for folks to come and observe. I would hope that folks would maybe appreciate that they're not necessarily sitting there for a session where They may be in a competing position. But my thought was, in the past, we've either broadcast or not broadcast, to make them at a point where they might be open. What I was, at least wanted the council to consider is recording them so that they are available and could be broadcast at a different point in time, but sometime after all of the interviews had taken place. And I don't know if that addresses some of your question, Bruce, on having folks, they're at least not in a position where it's live and being broadcast on that.
Well, and that was an issue, I think, in last year we had, it was just a logistics thing, but it ended up, somebody came in and we didn't realize that they were listening to someone else's interview and then preparing their own, which is not a good way to conduct the business. So there is another issue that it's open and that it's going to be available, but it's not going to be participative by all the applicants.
We keep the applicants outside. Wendy brings them in one at a time, so that, we haven't had them in here for that reason for a number of years.
When I first got here, they were in here.
Yeah, and I think the last couple of years or so, we haven't, and they've not had a problem with that either.
We had one exception, I think, that happened last year.
That slipped in.
Yep.
But that's, again, we could ask them, are you an applicant? If so, oh yeah, you.
And we can.
It's probably our bad for
we
not
can,
to.
We can tighten that up. But then recording the sessions, but certainly not broadcasting them. So,
Recording in audio and video, or just audio?
would leave it open. I think sometimes folks have challenges recognizing voices, and I'm okay with being audio and video, but recorded rather than broadcast.
Well, you haven't broadcast the last couple of years because you've kept them private, so I guess it's obviously your call, but value in having somebody come in kind of after the fact, you're appointing them.
Yeah, I say no.
What would be the purpose of recording them?
Just that it's open, not necessarily everyone's able to attend. If someone wants to go back and take a look at it, that it's an open part of the process.
I don't see any value in that.
Other sentiments?
So, not on that, I want to go back to a different issue.
Let's see if we can finish this one just to get sentiment, and then we'll come back.
I don't want to change what's in the ordinance. It says shall conduct all discussions in open session.
It's an open meeting,
Which it
doesn't mean
is.
it's on TV.
Yeah, it's a public meeting. You can't, people can walk in. We're talking about whether to televise it or not. Because it's all, anybody can come in. I think what is the expectation, I can tell you in other communities, they don't televise it, and people give it a level of respect to say you're essentially interviewing your employees, if you will, your appointees, and the applicants don't come in, and people tend to respect that. They know they can walk in if they want to, but they leave it, and you guys, as the city council, pick them and appoint them, and where they see them is in the public arena doing their work, so.
I guess I was gonna, I'd probably go down that path. I mean, many of the boards aren't televised. I think having these conversations amongst the council and the applicant is fine. We cover that issue where there is televised meetings for planning and licensing and.
All your quasi-judicials.
Yeah. Well, HPB isn't.
The quasi-judicial point parts, they will be.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. So no recording is where I'm gathering the sentiment. And then going back to involvement, so we can land on a space there, including, not including chairman or vice chairman, if it's not the chairman, chairperson, chair, and then including or not including staff liaison. Where are folks in their sentiment on that?
So I have a concern having anybody in here giving us advice about who to pick or not pick. it would seem to me if we're wanting to know what kind of expertise or working relationship that would be a nice addition or maintaining what they have for somebody who's wanting to be reappointed, that we could ask not the chair, but the group itself to say, man, we could really use somebody who knows how to make cotton candy, or whatever it is. That they would let us know what they think would make them a stronger group. And then we look for that in part through the interview process. But if we ask for recommendations from staff or the chair, or even the whole board, we wind up potentially having staff and the board say, I don't like this person that's on here. I don't want this person for these reasons, so find us somebody else. I think that is very awkward. I think focus us on what it is, the qualities that they think would be nice additions. So.
May I quickly reframe my earlier presentation? In a normal job or business organization, you know, an employee will have a year-end review with his or her boss and talk about his or her accomplishments, what they did. As a result, they'll either get, you know, a raise, more vacation, or whatever. In this case, the bosses go, I've never even met you before. I have no idea who you are. I wouldn't recognize if I saw you on the street. And in fact, I'm prohibited from even going to your meetings. So, as Jerry mentioned, certainly we've got a lot of brain power in this room, and we can make, I believe, educated decisions, but not the best decisions, because what we hope to have to allow us to serve the cities of Littleton to the best of our ability is the best and the brightest that the city has to offer. And I believe that a chair or a staff liaison who has been sitting and observing and watching somebody's performance over the course of, you know, up to 3 years should be in a position to advise us, if asked, you know, so-and-so's been doing a pretty good job. I think that he or she might, you know, benefit, and we might benefit from a continued association, as opposed to these 3 other people that have applied. Or, wow, this new guy who is a sharp guy, I think he can really add a lot of value. And I think that's something that is completely off the table if we don't solicit the advice and the opinion of the people that we have who already have the benefit of that information.
Other thinking? Jerry?
Peggy, I'm with you on this. I think we risk having folks that are just going to be like-minded. If we're asking for their opinion, who would you like to be on the board or commission? We're looking for people, just they're all of the same like-minded people. I would rather have it be a variety of people who don't always necessarily agree. As long as they go to the meeting and are prepared, that's what's important. I really don't need to hear that everybody is, we would like to have this person over that person. That's our decision. I don't want to put that on members of the boards or commissions.
Deb, first.
My intention is not to have them make the decisions for us. So we would still be making those decisions, but I think there is a value to having them, hearing their input. We hear input from a lot of people. Every single meeting we have, we hear input from the community, we hear input from staff, we hear input from applicants. We are in a position to hear input. That's what an elected person is. We don't sit there and not have our doors and windows open. And this is an opportunity for us to gain that level of input from people who are working in that realm with that board. It isn't, again, it's the quasi-judicials. We're not there. We don't have the feel for that. I think it would definitely enhance the interview process, and I think it would, I don't see it being detrimental. I think that the upside would always be we could make better selections, make wiser choices based on the need from the individual commissions.
Peggy, then Michael.
So I think the questions that we ask the people who are wanting to be reappointed are the key for looking at that. If our questions aren't good, then I think we need to refine those. But I think they've been very useful in making those decisions of reappointments. So,
Michael?
Thanks, Mayor. I just in terms of, I think there's nothing in at least what I've thought about relative to either the chair or staff liaison attending that would at all circumvent the council appointment of these individuals. Again, looking at how other communities do it, they tend to be in the room, and they're not doing the I don't like you, I like you type of thing, but it's really, and I think maybe Councilmember Stallman hit on it a little bit, or maybe someone else. It's really about what's the makeup of the board, how are the dynamics working for it, is there a specific type of skill sets that's there, and the same is offered by the staff liaison, because they both see them in the public realm, but they also see them in the private realm with the interactions that they come in and they're talking to them. And so if you were to include those guys in your process, I would suggest, again, how other communities do it is you're not asking them about specifics, do you like this person or that person, but really pose the question to both of those individuals, what's working, what's not within that particular board, what kind of skill set, what type of personality you're looking for, how do you make sure that it's not groupthink, to Councilmember Valdez's concern. If what you're getting is a lot of, are you getting all 7-0 votes, okay? Is there a good debate that's occurring, those types of things. So they're a resource for you, and you can either choose to incorporate them into the process and take their input at some level of value, but certainly at the end of the day, it's the 7 of you that are picking it, and nobody's, I think, trying to dilute that. It's just, do you have all the information that you want and feel like you need to be as informed and educated in making that very important choice, especially to those quasi-judicials. Thanks, Mayor.
I'm going to ask a question about that and what you're aware of that occurs in other jurisdictions. I know I've heard some, but asking them how's the group dynamics and is there a background or skill set that's essential or missing is a conversation or input that can happen before the interviews. Do they actually sit there through the interviews and respond after the pool of candidates for that particular board or commission may have been considered?
I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it where the mayor, in particular, goes and speaks and meets with the chairs, or typically the way I've seen it done is you have the mayor meeting with the chair and the staff liaison, has that conversation and then conveys that to the whole group. The other way I've seen it fairly commonly done is, and I think somebody had suggested this as well, is they're sitting in the room, they're not participating in the interviews, and then they come forward during the deliberation of the council, and they're there for answering questions. They're not necessarily offering anything in a proactive stance, but there is a resource, somebody you can turn to, and if you guys are deliberating and you're wondering, boy, would it be more useful in this particular one to have a developer or an architect, you can turn and say, hey, what do you think? What are the issues that have come forward? If you think about planning, the community development director may be able to say, hey, we think we're getting more of these types of projects coming down the pike. That might lead you guys to think you want this type of person over that.
With that input, would like to go around the room and hear what folks' thoughts are as far as staff and chair involvement.
I would still believe there's some upside for us in terms of having those folks involved. I think it can be done respectfully, and I think it adds valuable input to the deliberation process, and we get a better quality result, potentially.
Bruce?
With great concern, I think we can have that person there. It's still going to be the council choice. The one concern that I would have is that person will have served for 3 years, and if they weren't serving admirably, other action should have been taken, rather than waiting for a selection.
Which we have. Peggy?
So, no, I don't want them present, but I would love to have something written saying these are some things that I think you might consider.
Deb?
I do want them both present, and as, listening to the interviews, not actively participating in them, and then being there for comments and questions from council as we deliberate.
Randy?
To echo Michael's sentiment about them not being proactive, in other words, it's our decision, they are responsive to our questions, if any, but I think them being there in real time allows them to be reactive to our questions. I mean, how are they going to know how to predict who our pool of applicants are when we don't even know at this point? So I'd like to have them both there.
Jerry?
I don't think it's necessary. I don't think the system is working fine as it is. I don't see any reason to add another level to the selection process as it is, so I'm opposed to it.
Hearing the sentiment of council,
And your opinion is?
I'm willing to, I was thinking about getting it all in writing ahead of time, but that might be a task that would be daunting. So having them present and hearing that, I didn't hear anyone kind of lean with having the mayor go around and have meetings, so I figured that was not a great idea, and that's okay. Having them present and seeing how we worked this year gives us an opportunity going forward. I think, can I ask for a write-up of a draft of guides on this, either Wendy or we can at least look at that and look for that to be distributed, so it would be one of those things to do.
I'm sorry, what are we writing?
You're writing a guide for their expectations that we would like to invite them. We'd like them to be observant and then responsive to questions.
Yes, I'm clear now. Thank you. I just didn't understand what we were writing.
And whatever else we may have said somewhere along the way as far as those notes, and we can have a chance to maybe review that.
And osmosis.
And osmosis, yes. And if we could see that before.
Mind meld.
There you go.
Yes. Before the end of this week, it gives us a chance to then, as we are looking at scheduling that. This will add recognition on the part of council, add a little complexity to scheduling that, because we'd want to have the various different boards and committees and authorities and commissions scheduled together. And so I'll recognize that is going to be a little more logistical challenge in this. And we'll see how that goes. So,
Clarify, is this for just the quasi-judicial or all of it?
yes, I was looking at just the quasi-judicial at this point in time, which gives us some exposure to the process. And one of the things I do appreciate is, because I don't observe those, just in case an appeal comes forward. I have stayed away, so I think I do welcome some of that input. And I think each of us, and a reminder, I suppose, but each of us are intelligent enough to consider sources on this and be in a position to weigh that input. And we can be careful to, our guide will be ask questions, but not questions about the candidate you prefer, but what attributes are you looking for, and put it in that context. Okay. Coming back now, the part that we didn't get to is the questions that we actually have during the interviews. In our package, we've seen the questions that we used last year in our interview process. And I'll start with some of that being looking for better ideas as to how we can be in a position to have conversations with folks so we can get to the real people. Yes, Deb.
Every year, it just is such a challenge asking these questions. We've tweaked them a little bit, we've added some, we've taken some out, we've added the questions for the reappointment folks because that needed to be different. But, oh my God, I just have always felt as though these questions are, I don't ever feel like we really get what we really need out of them. And what we're starting to hear a lot from these applicants is that they're putting a lot of this information in their application. So they're saying, well, as I said in my application, and kind of looking at us like, didn't you read it? And then they're repeating. I look at questions, some of the questions are just, we just shouldn't even be asking them. To ask someone, what do you think South Metro Housing Options' role is in affordable housing in the community? Unless this person has studied South Metro Housing Options' role in the community, they're just going to speculate just wag the question. And that I don't get any value out of that, putting someone on the spot like that. I'd rather know more about how they make decisions, what are the things that they, what can they bring to a dynamic group, and, different things like that. And so I am very much of a mind that we freewheel it. We just go away from these questions. We've got their applications. We can put together some questions of our own on their, based on what they've told us. Some questions that we know we'd like to hear based on the roles we know they play in their respective boards or commissions. And we dynamically have that conversation with them. And as they answer a question, it may spur another question from another council member and just create a little bit more of a random dialogue that I think will produce greater results.
Other thoughts? Bruce?
Bill, you always asked a question that wasn't in these. Your question ought to be in these because that was a pretty good question. It was, I described using your experience, a tough decision you've had to make or something like that. And I thought that was getting to Debbie's issue of this is more about them and they're telling it. So I like that question. And I don't like the ones that are specific that somebody's supposed to have some expertise because very few people will. So that's a question they're not going to answer well. However, I do think I like standardization. I don't think we fall under those kinds of concerns that you would if we were hiring somebody in the city, where there's a lot of rules. But I do like some standard questions. And, we can bounce off those because we can. So a few good questions, and I liked the format where the mayor asked them because they were always the same, we weren't going around the room. It was just the one person, and it doesn't have to be the mayor, but one spokesperson. And so I'd like to stay with that standardization.
Andy?
I'm going to respectfully go a different way, and it's only because I, frankly, in preparation for this process, observed the last go-around with the city council as sort of just a guy out in the audience. And, from the satellite view, my take on it is the standard questions I've perceived as being very awkward and very stilted and mechanical, and in fact, not designed to allow the applicant to feel at home at all, or, I don't want to say free-flowing, but we're interviewing people who have characteristics they'd like to share with us about why they feel that they would be qualified, perhaps uniquely so, to fill this position. But we're asking them one-size-fits-all questions. And if we're trying to fill these positions, we talked about on some of the boards with an architect here and an engineer here and a planner there and so forth and so on, then I think we ought to encourage these people to express their differences and how they might complement perhaps the other person that we might have just interviewed. But if we're asking them just the same questions, and by the way, I hate the questions too. I'm just going on record by saying that, sorry. For however they were generated, but I just felt it. I'm sorry, I'll shut up. I think it was awkward. I'll leave it at that.
Other thoughts? Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think we can get, I think a lot of the canned questions have been oriented towards, help us understand that you've done some homework almost. And you can probably cover it almost verbatim with, help us understand why you're passionate about the museum board or historic preservation or fine arts or whatever. And let them talk broadly about it, but I tend to agree that I think the thought process questions, which are more open-ended, that, okay, so here's an example of a situation that licensing authority might encounter, talk to us about your thought process concerning that issue. Yeah, and that, to me, those open-ended questions are the ones where you get depth. I mean, I don't have a problem if somebody, if we want to ask a few, if you want to ask a few of the canned questions just in a general sense, but I agree with Bruce Beckman, that here's an example, in your experience, the question you were asking, I think is good, because it shows thought process, which is, to me, the most valuable attribute of the interview process in general.
Situations. Yes, Peggy.
I see it a little different. I think some of the boards, it's really important to ask some of the questions that are there. Now, so for starters, for any of them, we would say, why do you want to serve? I mean, that's going to get at some personal stuff. But there's certain, and I didn't print these out, so I can't just flip through, but Building Board of Appeals, people need some kind of background, I think, for that. The licensing authority, if somebody absolutely can't stand alcohol or marijuana, we probably need to know that, right? I mean, if they go and puncture people's tires because they see them coming out of a bar, right? So some of that's really important. And so maybe we should run through and just say, yeah, Jesus, let's throw out these and keep these, and then see if there's some others that we could add. But particularly the quasi-judicial boards, I think they're really important.
I think asking open-ended questions is a good way to go, as long as you ask an applicant for the same position the same open-ended question. I think freewheeling it is not the way to go, not at all, because then you might ask one applicant a question, they give you an answer, when you don't ask another applicant for the same position, the same question. I don't think that's fair to the applicants. I think asking the same open-ended question is a good way, because that is where you learn the individual, let them go ahead and talk. But as long as you start them out with that open end, that's a good thing to go.
With all that wonderful input, I'm going to look to take on a task. And hopefully you will be kind in that. But I'm going to suggest I'll take a stab at the questions, looking to have some standard, and one that's been through the process knows I like open-ended questions a lot better, and take a stab at that. I'll look to shorten the list so that we're not asking what is awkward or absolutely covered very directly, and use that as a guide. I may want to sit down with a staff liaison or two just to make sure we're focused on the right things, and we'll look to have something to the group by Tuesday next week. So if we had any comments in general business, we can maybe take care of that so that we're prepared for the following week. Anyone object to that?
Not at all.
Just one of the guidelines we said was 15 minutes per applicant, so these are not all equal. So that's a little bit of the challenge.
Mine too. Yeah.
So I understand the challenge on that front. So with that, as far as the boards and commissions, we've sent some sentimental directions, or at least by sentiment of council. Okay, so if you can give us a few more minutes, I asked the city manager to maybe brief us on some things that have been released, put out, or relative to economic development. And he gets to freeform this a little bit, but he said he would be
I will be brief.
Reasonably brief.
It will be more than reasonably brief. Thank you, Mayor. We are passing around documents that you probably already have. Did you do those three? So, unfortunately, Denise has been out ill the last couple days, so I'm going to give you the quick update. But we held, and I believe I had told the council previously, we held a kind of a lunch and learn. We titled it Development and Reinvestment Presentation. It was the day that it snowed. We had about 35 RSVPs. We had 26 people end up coming to it. Councilmember Stein came for it, and I think got to at least say hello to everyone, so thank you again for doing that. The intent in that was really to talk to developers, real estate people, investors within the community, and let them know what we've been working on, continue to send the message that we are open for business, answer any questions that they may have. And we had a good number of those 26 people who were there who did want to meet with staff one-on-one and are continuing to follow up with Denise and her staff, and also Glenn in community development. So positive on that. Denise is going to continue to hold those periodically. And if folks are interested in learning about those when we have them, we can let you know. We've also updated the look of our go-to-littleton.com website and added some new business development on the littleton.gov.org site. So we're trying to figure out how do we make them seamless but keep them separate between the city website and the business website. We've got several projects, and don't ask me about the details because I don't have it, but we've got 4 projects under the Revitalization Incentive Grant. Remember, council increased that from $25,000 to $50,000. These are the projects outside of the downtown. So we've got those going on right now. We don't have any finished projects. I know Councilmember Cole was interested in once we have the before and after. So when we have a completed project from 13 or from 14, we'll get that. We'll get Denise in front of you and update that. We've completed a business survey through the economic development piece, and that's going to be in Denise's annual report, which should be coming out the second weekend of February. So we're going to get you the economic development 2013 report in about 2 to 3 weeks. Downtown specifically, and Councilmember Stein, we've got, we're working on 3 different areas downtown. The downtown merchants asked if we would have a staff rep on the board, so on their executive board. So we've got, I believe Denise is going to be the representative on that board, so that's great. We can incorporate. And relative to that, we are doing, and obviously for all of you, but specifically for you, Randy, a gateway and wayfinding signage for the downtown, and then looking at doing an RFP right now in partnership with the downtown for rebranding the downtown specifically. So exciting times, I think. It ties in with the work that we did last year on a citywide basis, but this one really focused on the downtown. And it started, Councilmember Brinkman, with the work with, I think, Spur and having them come in and make the presentation to the group. I think that was about a year ago now, somewhere in that time frame. So it's been a slow iteration, moving it down.
Michael, will
yes.
that include some sort of, we had talked about
The kiosk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
Period. Exclamation mark.
thank you.
Yes.
Cool.
Go ahead.
You have
Yeah,
more?
I got more, but if you got a question.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish what you're
Okay.
doing. You may cover it.
I had emailed these to you. I did not trifold. I apologize. And we've been passing them out, and I think Councilmember Beckman, you're going to pass them out at a chamber event you're going to. But this is the updated list of the business service resource. It's on the website. It's both on the business website as well as the city website. But if you, I mean, as much as you can send folks to Denise, she has an opportunity to engage with them, have a discussion, help them out. As you guys are aware, we're starting to get some successes. We're starting to get some check marks where we can actually take credit, as opposed to, I would argue, at least in the past, where it was hard to connect the dots on saying our actions and activities led to X, Y, and Z. But we're now getting people saying we have relocated in part because of Denise and her staff. So pass these out. We can print as many as you like. They're available electronically.
Can these be distributed to the folks that we know are businesses in town, or at least with maybe less than 100 employees?
Yes. Yep.
And I think being proactive on that side, because, or maybe it's 200 employees, I don't know what the number would be, but finding some threshold and trying to hit the smaller folks, and probably not the sole practitioner as much as So you may start at 2, between 2 and 100 or something like that.
Yep, we will do that.
Just a little question. Are these an accordion, or do they?
They're a trifold.
This isn't printed exactly how you would see it,
No, well,
but it's a trifold.
okay.
It's
because
actually in the.
These are printed, one's upside down and one,
Yeah,
but,
well, see, you don't.
Oh,
That's right.
so that
all
was.
right, so I printed them.
Oh,
They
okay.
should have been, they should have been flipped on the short side, but,
We don't let him use the copy.
The real printed ones are outside.
yes.
Busted. Damn.
Well, you did both sides, that's.
Thank you, Peggy.
That's good.
Well, no, I was just trying to.
I didn't even notice. All right, how am I doing on red? Is the red matching the red right here? Good, all right, thank you. The second sheet I passed out was the seminars. This is our additional lunches that we have, and again, you guys are welcome to attend if you want. Councilmember Stein, I think you have that list, so encourage you with what you've demonstrated as interest to participate in that. And then I think the most exciting document, which should be out in the Littleton report, is our updated annual community scorecard, and I've seen a couple of you guys flipping through it, but it's got we're starting to get some year-to-year, year-over-year data, which I think at our last meeting, Councilman Beckman had pointed out, don't remember the context, but ties in with our dashboard work that's online that Deputy City Manager Mike Broughton has been working on. And so this is kind of the paper version. This goes to all our households. This is the easy-to-read, hopefully coffee table, trivia information for folks, and hopefully really is valuable for them. It is online. It's on the front page right now for that, and it's our goal, again, tying in from this work, that the dashboard is the more in-depth. Ultimately, as I think I discussed with you at a previous meeting, to the extent that we can get live data tied into that, you'll be able to click on some of those graphs, some of the data, and it'll bring in from wherever those databases are, whatever the current information is. And this will be that static one that just gets mailed out on an annual basis.
Nice picture of Kettering Lake filled.
Yeah.
With potable water from a fire hydrant, thanks to Denver Water.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Sorry, man.
Do we have an ETA for the dashboard
Well, it's,
launch?
no. We probably do, but we don't this evening at this moment. But we will find out for you, Mayor. Yes, happy to, yep. So, and it's going to start, again, in that static stage. And then as Information Services has the opportunity to start to tie in, I had, I think, emailed the council a while ago. We're working on it's probably third or fourth quarter. We're looking at a database system where we tie in those data points to, because there's an outside software vendor that really assists us with that, but it's a workload more than it is a financial situation at this point, but I'll get it to you guys.
And we've had these things that have shown up on some of our calendars with regard Google training.
Yes, in March. Yeah.
Any other comments?
So for you guys, it's really just, and Ken would really like you all to be there, but I don't know if you're watching, Ken, but it's not overly necessary unless you're interested. It's moving from Outlook email and Outlook calendaring to Google email and Google calendaring. So if you're fairly confident, a lot of you guys might have Gmail personal accounts anyway and are comfortable with it. But we will have, it is white glove service. It's part of what comes with the contract. And so it's in person. There'll be some staff, I think even Google folks coming out and doing the training. So if you're interested in it, that we've only got a small window because I think they're here for 2 days for doing a large number of both staff and the council. And I think we've got all 7 of you currently scheduled for either March 27th or 28th, I believe, are the 2 days for it.
And any behavior guidance for us when we participate?
On the Google training?
Yeah.
Sit up straight and pay attention?
Okay.
I don't know, was that a trick question?
Like it, Phil.
Bring a colorful shirt. What are they? Red, blue, yellow, green, I think are the Google colors, whatever, but.
Precursor is
You might get a
watching
free
the-
T-shirt.
Watching Interns, movie with Vince Vaughn. So.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
I don't think I heard you say it, maybe you didn't, I missed, but is there any
Probably.
update on the marketing coordinator?
Oh, yes, so we have, we had about 250 applicants. Staff interviewed 11 of them last Thursday and Friday. They've narrowed it down to the top 3. Kelly's out at a training, a peak performance training this week, along with Tiffany, which, side story, it's a fantastic training. The feedback's been great. In fact, I think Tiffany ran home to do more homework. But I think interviews are scheduled a week from tomorrow for the final 3, and then we'll pick one and go from there on a start date for it. So, but feedback that I got from the staff involved in the interviews was we had a great set of candidates. They actually thought there were 6 top candidates, so if none of the top 3 really feel right, we've got a second pool of 3 that we can move down to as well.
So they like the peak performance thing, eh?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, we've got folks scheduled January, February, March right now. They're only letting us do 2 a month. So for the full council, I'm not sure you're aware, Councilman Stallman, NLC, it was a National League of Cities conference.
Exactly.
Had a presentation from the city and county of Denver, and they're put together a very comprehensive kind of leadership mentoring type program, and not one of the ones that you go to for a couple hours and it's rah, 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 and there's a lot of quotes, but a full week, in-depth, team building. They've got to put presentations together. They've got to do video. They've got to do a video thing, business plan, real leadership mentoring stuff. And so we've got staff lined up. They've given us 2 slots in their training each month, and so we're going to send and this isn't for department heads necessarily, so it's more for those folks within the organization that have kind of on their own demonstrated a level of leadership or interest and kind of self-motivate within. It's to take those folks and really build on that and explore the opportunity to have them become leaders in their work areas. And so
Denver's really embraced this, and they've got a lot of people that have already teed it up, but it's also a lot of the foundation of it is this whole lean process improvement kind of thing, and what they're basically doing is devolving process to take, non-value added steps out so that they're just doing the steps in any given process that are quote unquote value add.
Yeah.
And they've really drunk the Kool-Aid on it, but it was real interesting, and it's a train the trainer thing. Our folks come back and then they come back as black belts, and they start training green belts, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's part of why we're not looking for department heads only. We're really looking for those key players within the organization who can, as the councilman said, who can take what they do and make it more efficient and effective and lead by example, et cetera. So these are the first 2 folks. Kelly and Tiffany are the 2 going, and then we've got 2 more in February and March, et cetera, et cetera. So
It'll be interesting to hear some of the feedback coming back, and I happened to be in Kelly's office for another reason on Friday, and it is 5 full days, and it's homework every night. And it is intense homework, just looking at what was in the book. So it's not idle time away from the office for sure. We kind of have an open floor. Any other comments? Remember.
I know we've all received letters of concern about King Soopers and what we can and can't do as a city, and they're basically a private construction company at some point. But I've had some conversations with Michael, and I know I've passed some things back and forth with Jerry. The only comment that I have is, this is a great opportunity and we don't even know where the opportunities lay, for the city to make this a memorable achievement which we use as a model for anything in the future. And I know part of the frustrations we all have is, hey, the public street stops at the curb, how they do their lay down and, how they run their construction, and what they do is really up to them. But somehow, if we could look for opportunities to influence this in a way that makes it good, it will pay great benefits to us as we look at other opportunities. And that's been the discussion that Michael and I have had, and I know others have had, so.
And
We kind of have two sides on this, which is not getting in their way because they are a business, and anytime they're closed during this period is lost revenue and margin in there. So.
I was just going to, so we've passed on the concerns from the emails that you have all received to King Soopers, as well as community development. So as they're refining the site plan and getting closer to, the permit's been issued, just so everyone's aware, and we may or may not get, I think I had told you guys last time, we might get a 2-week advance notice. I'm not sure we're actually going to get that anymore. There's probably going to be signs showing up on there when you enter the building, and it could be closed down within a couple days, because now they're in the place where it's within their control at this point. We certainly will work with them during the construction to make sure that, parking stays available, that roadways stay open and that kind of thing. But I think the mayor hit on it that these guys are in the business to sell groceries, not to build buildings. And so to the extent that they want to be shut down as little as possible and open back up as quickly as possible, that's their incentive to make it happen. I would be less concerned, or I'd be more concerned rather, if we were dealing with a smaller business that may or may not have the financial wherewithal to do that. But these guys do have the financial wherewithal to make this happen, and they are a major corporation, and so they're going to be moving on it. As we discussed last time, Wendy is working with the omnibus and shopping cart specifically, and we'll make sure that folks are aware about the bus schedule to take them down to the Broadway and Mineral one as well. So we'll do our part on the city to move it out, get the information out, and again, we're passing along the concerns, and community development has those emails, and they'll be contacting the emailer, interested party, to follow up and let them know basically what I just told you as well. So we're aware, and I think to Councilman Beckman's comment, and these guys are making an investment for the next 30 years. And it's always an inconvenience when construction happens. If you've driven on Broadway, there's a different type of inconvenience in that area. This one happens to be groceries. But when it's done, it's going to be fantastic. And as you all know, we're really reaching out to those businesses in that area to try to get more reinvestment and have this be that first domino. So with that, Mayor, thanks.
And the sooner you can get the information out about the omnibus shopping cart to the folks in that area, the better. I'm getting a boatload of emails, and thank you for sharing me some of the stuff you've had too as well. But the sooner we can get that out, the better. I think it'll help some folks, because the emails I get primarily, they're not opposed, they're just concerned about how can they get out.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I appreciate it.
Valid
Thanks.
concern.
So, thank you all. Have a great evening. Drive safely. It's cold. 2 hours.